When you're driving, anything can happen. See? So where do you go when your tires need work? Or there's a fluid leak that wasn't there yesterday? You go to Tires Plus. At Tires Plus, we do high-quality car service with trained technicians. We're open late, we're good guys, and we wish we'd have kept the receipt for this car. Thinking service, think Tires Plus.
Nodak Speedway, the playground of power, invites you to a heart-pounding night of racing action. This Sunday, May 7th, is opening night, with the green flag dropping at 6 p.m. and 4 classes tearing up the track. IMCA Sport Mods, Hobby Stock, Stock Cars, and Modifieds. All the night's racing action is brought to you by Enterbase. It's opening night, this Sunday, May 7th at the Nodak Speedway. The playground of power. The ground is already shaken.
The dirt track show in North Dakota that we've been waiting for. It's the Dirt Weekly. And we are live from the Pro Style production offices south of the beautiful Minot, North Dakota. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Nick Holberg, the host and producer of the Dirt Weekly. We've settled on a star-studded cast of gentlemen across North Dakota, Estevan, Saskatchewan as well. All for one reason. We have a love and a passion for dirt track racing, and that's why we're here each and every Wednesday night. This is the Dirt Weekly. I'm Nick Holberg. Thanks for joining us. Time now to introduce the cast that joins us tonight, Mr. Lindsey Lawson and the legend himself, Mr. Larry McFall. Fellas, welcome in. First of all, passion for the sport is why we're here. Larry, you had this idea a while back, and it's showtime.
Yeah, well, Nick, I got together with Nick about a couple of weeks ago and just decided that the coverage of dirt track racing in this area has started to get so good because of Barry Braun getting it going, of course, on his webcast with his companies, and then Brandon Beater jumping on board with Darn TV. And now it's covered very well, at least in the western part of the state. So Nick and I had a conversation about picking it up another notch and having a show weekly talking about all the racing around the state to help promote it and make it get better. And we put the Dirt Weekly together, and a lot of hard work by Nick. And I want to thank you before we even get going for all the hard work on the studio and everything we need to get this on the air. Pretty excited about the Dirt Weekly.
I absolutely am too, and anytime I get to hang out with you guys every Wednesday night should be a lot of fun. Lindsey, for you, you've been in racing your whole life. Why don't you start and tell us a little bit about your passion and where you come from, your background? That Lawson name's been around for so long.
Yeah, I guess you could honestly say that I was born into it. I was born, actually my birthday is tomorrow. I was born in May, and I was at the racetrack by the end of June. So I tell people I been at the Nodak Speedway since I was 0, and that's the absolute truth. My dad was one of the original members of the club. He wasn't one of the charter members, but he was there the second meeting, and from that time on, he's probably been to more races than anybody, and I've been right there dragging on his coattails the entire time. Of course, my brother Kevin and my nephew Dusty continue to race sprint cars to this day, so I'm out there each and every week. But yeah, the old days, talking about the passion for it, of course you get that in the old days when, and in the old days to me were in the 60s and 70s, when there was so much excitement. I used to look forward to those fair races when everybody raced on the big half-mile track, Larry. I know you and I have talked about that, and it was such an exciting time back then when they would take that little quarter-mile track, utilize the same front straightaway, and the fair would come to town, and the guys from all over the Midwest, name drivers from across the Midwest would show up. We saw some great drivers come through here in your and my time at the Nodak Speedway, some guys that are in the Hall of Fame across the country. National Hall of Fame drivers that used to come up here and race, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like I say, I'm still out there helping out in the pits, and still enjoy going to the racetrack every weekend.
I didn't have the opportunity to be in a race car family, but I'll never forget the first time I went to the Nodak Speedway. My mom and dad took me when I was 7 years old, and we got down underneath the old grandstands that have been now replaced in 2010 with the new grandstand that we have. And I'd never been to the races before, and if some of you folks remember the old grandstand, the concession area, and then the old metal steps that went up, and they made me stand in line with them for food right off the bat, and I was going crazy. I could hear the cars, you could smell the methane because the super modifieds at that time were running before they were called super sprints. And finally, the greatest words in motorsports were spoken. My mom goes, "You can go up now." Those are the greatest words.
I thought it was, "Gentlemen, start your engines."
So did I.
Not for me, boys. Got up to the top of those steps, and it was just like slapped in the face with speed, colors, and the noise. And then the excitement of the people that were already there. They were running hot laps, and I just automatically got hooked. For the rest of my life, I've been there steady. I wrote the Nodak Daily Racing News in '82, wrote stories on every race every night, and they gave the paper out at the door the next day. That turned into being the assistant flagman in '87 and '88, head flagman in '89, and then flagged a little bit in '94, '95, and then thanks to my hockey buddy, Robert Ferguson, Charlie Fox, in 1998, he asked me, "Hey, you do a good job with me doing hockey. Do you want to do racing?" Yeah. And now here, 20 years down the road now, more pumped up than I've ever been for it.
And not to mention that you're on the Nodak Speedway ballot for the Hall of Fame this year. Congratulations on that. A couple guys in my mind here on this set that definitely would be deserving of that. With all that history, with all that we know about your guys' background now, and there's so much more, and the reason that we're here with you gentlemen is knowing that you guys are just like encyclopedias for dirt track racing across North Dakota. So for you fans, this is what's interesting. You can log right onto our Facebook page, The Dirt Weekly on Facebook. Make sure to like us there. And we're going to interact with you all night long, all season long. Ask Lindsay questions, ask Larry questions. I don't know if anyone wants to hear from me, but the two gentlemen to my left certainly do have plenty of insight on all sorts of stuff. And I know your opinions are something that a lot of people would like to hear. So with that being said, are you guys looking forward to the questions and the show coming up? This is going to be a fantastic time.
We should talk to the producer and make sure that the questions are screened before they come our way. Sometimes we have a habit of maybe answering the question before we realize we shouldn't have said that. Yeah. So maybe we should talk to the producer first about the questions.
If you folks go to the Facebook page right now, I put a thread on there that says, "Are you ready to interact with us on Dirt Weekly?" That's the one I'd like you to put your comments on. So that we can scroll through that easily and as we go tonight and see if we can maybe answer any questions or anything that you might have.
On tonight's show, we've got a bunch of good stuff lined up for you. We're going to go through last year's track champions. We have the Darn TV Power Rankings and the top drivers in the four major classes, maybe you would say, from Western North Dakota. We're going to talk about those, histories of the racetracks, but now let's introduce you to the correspondents that we have at every racetrack across North Dakota.
Hello race fans, my name is Byron Fichter. I am your Dirt Weekly correspondent for the Estevan Motor Speedway. I am also the official photographer of the Dakota Classic Modified Tour. Estevan Motor Speedway has the distinction of being the only Canadian-based racetrack that has the US IMCA racing sanctioning. That being said, we run IMCA Modifieds, IMCA Stock Cars, and IMCA Hobby Stocks on our regular scheduled program, which is every other Saturday. Additionally, we also run the Slingshot class, which is designed for kids age 6 to 14, and that is our entry-level class, which we introduced last year on a part-time basis. Our first race will be this Saturday, May 6th. Local start time at 5 p.m. For you Minot and Williston folks, that'll be 6 p.m. your local time. I hope you all join us, and we will update you next week with some results and some racing action recap. Thank you. See you next week.
Hello, everybody. Chad Hoff here. I'm one of the correspondents for the Dirt Weekly program produced by Nick Holberg, covering the Grand Forks area, River City Speedway. Darren and crew up here have got a great summer schedule, and I'm really excited to go through it with them and cover it for you guys. We're going to meet a lot of good people up here. Really excited to talk to them and bring it down to you guys here at the Dirt Weekly. Was told to get on here and give a little backstory on my love for dirt track racing and also my announcing background. I started announcing back in college. Was doing college basketball, college baseball, a little dibbling here and there, nothing crazy, and helped out with some DJ services down there as well. When we got moving around a little bit, we moved to Dickinson, Bismarck, and Minot. When we moved to Minot, my wife and I got involved, with Ken Oda and then Toro's organization. I actually filled in for Nick Holberg when he went out and helped out with the Minot High hockey team. I filled in for him at the Toros games. Got kind of hooked on there and just kind of fell in love with the announcing again. So got in contact with Nodex Speedway down there and filled in for, I was going to fill in down below for Lindsay Lawson for Victory Lanes. Ended up going up top with Larry McFall there and learning the ropes. Started announcing some legend cars, and after that I started going full tilt announcing with Larry, and I just loved every minute of it. It was just so much fun. The atmosphere is great. It's a very family-oriented thing. Dirt track racing is, and that's what my love hit. I'm a very family-oriented guy, so it was awesome to get that and meet a lot of good, close friends that I still talk to today that are still racing down there. So I'm excited to be part of the team, and we're going to kick it off here this week at the Grand Forks area of the River City Speedway. First night show is this Friday night. Ready to rock and roll up here. You guys can't wait to show you what's going to happen this summer here in Grand Forks area. For the Dirt Weekly, this is Chad Hoff. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Well, it's a great day at the racetrack right here today, and it's going to be an even better one on Friday, May 5th, when this racing season comes roaring back to life right here at the Red River Valley Speedway here in West Fargo, North Dakota. I'm Corey Litton. I will be your correspondent here for the Dirt Weekly at both the Red River Valley Speedway and the Jamestown Speedway this season. We got plenty of great specials on tap this year. We'll start with the Red River Valley Speedway, who's going to be in their 50th anniversary season this year. The classes, of course, IMCA Hobby Stocks, IMCA Northern Sport Mods, the INEX Legends, IMCA Stock Cars, a brand new class added this year, and the IMCA Modifieds. Once again, our opening night, Friday, May 5th. And then we move on to May 12th, the Fargo Force Super Stock Series will be in town, as well as Thursday and Friday, May 25th and 26th. That'll be the Dakota Cat 100 and the Mike Bruns 42. And of course, brought to you on IMCA TV. Saturday, June 17th, the Duel in the Dakotas. The World of Outlaws are back out here after a, I believe, 5-year absence out here at the Red River Valley Speedway. Then we move to Sunday, July 16th, the Red River Valley Fair NOSA Sprint Cars Special. Friday, July 21st, the Kingpin Clash. Wednesday, August 2nd, it'll be Cruise Night with the NLRA Late Models. And then, of course, we have Friday, August 18th, the Sanders Modified Challenge. Friday, September 29th, and Saturday, September 30th, the INEX Legends Nationals in the Fargo Force Super Stock Series. Super Stocks will be here night number 1. Of course, also with the Jamestown Speedway, you got plenty of great racing out there. We have also our regular classes, Bombers, WISSOTA Midwest Modifieds, WISSOTA Street Stocks, Slingshots, and the IMCA Modifieds. Opening night will be Saturday, May 6th, and of course, June 10th, we have the NOSA Sprint Car Special. June 17th, the Dakota Legends Tour. July 4th, the Fireworks Spectacular. And July 8th, the Dakota Classic Mod Tour. August 5th will be the NLRA Late Model Special, and the 19th will be the Sanders Modified Challenge, and the 46th Annual Stock Car Stampede will be September 22nd through the 23rd. Well, race fans, it's been a lot of fun hanging out with you today here in Victory Lane, the very same Victory Lane that saw people like Mitch Johnson, Rick Auckland, Dave Stork, Big Joe Jacobson, Eric Laudenschlager, all of those great racers from around this area. But I'm going to have to take off here, and I'd like to see you all at the racetrack this weekend. So for the Dirt Weekly, I'm Corey Litton.
Hi, I'm Scott Garblum. I'm the announcer at the Cheyenne River Speedway. Also, we'll be bringing you all the information this year. A little bit about myself. Born and raised in Lisbon. Grew up watching my uncles race at the Cheyenne River Speedway, Jamestown, and up in Fargo. Like I said, been around racing all my life. Did a little bit of racing myself. Ran a mini stock for 2 years and ran a WISSOTA street stock for 1 year. A little bit about the Cheyenne River Speedway. It's a non-profit organization that it's all volunteer work. It's started out in 1974 as a half mile on the Ransom County Fairgrounds In 1981, there was a tornado that came through and wiped out the old half mile, and the fair board got together and they decided that they still wanted to have a racetrack, so they made it into a quarter mile, changed the location of the racetrack to where it is now. It took them about a year to get everything built up, and the fall of '82 they had their first night on the quarter mile for the Ransom County Fair. Rich history at the Cheyenne River Speedway, a lot of good local talent, and this year we currently are running the Cheyenne River Speedway mini stocks, the hobby stocks, Wayzata street stocks, Wayzata Midwest modifieds, and the Wayzata super stocks. Also this year we'll be running the NLRA late models, and we'll be having the battle at the Boneyard this fall. It'll be my pleasure to bring you all the information from the Cheyenne River Speedway.
Hi guys, my name is Luke Krogh. I'll be your eyes and ears down here at Southwest Speedway down in Dickinson, North Dakota. A little info on me is I used to race Wayzata street stocks for a year and been racing the sport mod now. This will be my third year running this car, so run that in Dickinson, Wilson, up in Minot also too. And a little rundown about Southwest Speedway. It opened in 1972, and I believe it was called Badlands Speedway to start off, and then it changed its name in 1980, I believe, to the Southwest Speedway. And down in Dickinson here, they run IMCA A mods, Northern Sport mods, Wayzata street stocks, IMCA Sport compacts, and they got a little hobby stock class that they run their track rules at. So, looking forward to giving you guys results each week. Thanks for tuning in.
Speedway, the playground of power, invites you to a heart-pounding night of racing action. This Sunday, May 7th, is opening night, with the green flag dropping at 6 p.m. and 4 classes tearing up the track. IMCA Sport Mods, Hobby Stock, Stock Cars, and Modifieds. All the night's racing action is brought to you by Enterbase. It's opening night, this Sunday, May 7th at the Nodak Speedway. The playground of power. The ground is already shaking.
Dirt Weekly covering the racing from all across North Dakota, Saskatchewan as well. We're live here at the Pro Style Production Studios south of the beautiful Minot, North Dakota. I'm Nick Holbrook. Thanks again for joining us tonight. Alongside of Mr. Larry McFall and Lindsay Lawson, let's talk now about the history of some of these tracks. We heard from the correspondents, and unfortunately Brandon Beater not able to be here tonight, who's also going to join us and be a key player in this whole thing. Brandon working on the Nodak Speedway, of course, as the president of the race club there. But when you talk history of these racetracks, I know that you gentlemen certainly must have a full list.
Yeah, we've got a couple of correspondents out there that really helped me out with this. Scott Sim did some investigating for us out in Williston. I am going to be the Williston correspondent because I announce out there, and then also the Nodak Speedway. Lindsay and I know that really well, so those are the history tracks that I'd like to talk about, along with the River City Speedway in Grand Forks. Nick, Chad Hoff is our correspondent out there, but it was a little tied up this week, so I kind of took care of the Grand Forks history as well, and hopefully it's right off of, to be honest with you, right off their website. So hopefully most of it is is fairly accurate. The Nodak Race Club, according to Lindsay's dad, Jerry, and Doug Admonson, who I talked to a couple of years ago, one time at the races, told me that Nodak actually started where the Nash Finch warehouse is now, or I guess it's now not called the Nash Finch warehouse anymore. It was kind of a swampland that they raced around on a little bit, and then they ended up moving up on the hill that we all know as Magic City Campus and Jim Hill now, and that was just places that this group of guys got together to hot rod. And then in 1952, Seymour Anderson, who had a lot of acreage on North Hill and his farm up there, decided that they would give them some land. And that picture that you folks see on the screen right now is that track in 1953. And if you look close in the background, you can see the elevators, the grain elevators down in the valley in Minot. And if you look real close in that picture, you can see the old water tower that is up where the old Washington School was. It kind of gets you an idea of where that track was. Actually, might be just a few blocks from Jerry's house right now on North Hill. This is just west of North Hill Bowl. And so they raced up there for about a year now. As you could see, safety was always a concern. By the way, that's the 69 of Andy Nicotanko in the Parrot Inn Special leading the field at that time. The fans parked just off the corner watching out of their cars. And the father and, I assume, son, by a very sturdy crash wall, so I don't think there would have been a problem.
Well, you know, they used to build fencing a lot better than they do now, Larry, so I'm assuming that fence would have held the cars back from the crowd.
So they raced up there, and then only for 1 year, and then in 1954, they made the move down to the North Dakota State Fairgrounds, which had a horse racing track for many, many, many years. And they went down there at that time, a wood grandstand, and they raced starting in 1954 there. The new metal grandstand built in 1958, and then we recently replaced that in 2010 now with the state-of-the-art grandstand. But many, many memories of the Nodak Race Club, like I said, the first time I was there. And another thing that's always been loyal to me, and you can vouch for this, I'm almost afflicted by this logo. I've got it on my hat and my shirt, and this is what it used to be on the old programs. This is a 1965 program. The very first year I went, the very first night I went, this is the program. Kept it in pretty good shape, actually. This was styled by, I was a good friend of the Pence family in Minot, and Dorothy Pence, the mother, told me a long time ago that her son had did this logo. So I investigated into it and recently just talked to him last week. Her oldest boy, Dave, of the brothers of Dave, Jim, and Tom Pence, was in high school at that time in 5th grade, and the Nodak Race Club approached the school system and asked for a contest to design a new logo, and Dave Pence, who now lives in Illinois, was the winner of the contest with that logo. I think it was used until 1971 officially as the logo. So the club didn't have anything from 53 to 65. Then this logo came into play for about 6 years. I still wear it proudly today. And Dave Pence, I talked to him, he was so fired up about this. He left Minot in 72 and has never been back to a race since. But Dave was very fired up that I was still keeping his logo alive. I just sent him one of these hats and a 50th anniversary program that Nodak made back in 2002, which is probably one of the best programs that I've ever seen back at that time, the 50th anniversary. And he should be getting that this Thursday. And so that logo was made up by Dave Pence, and I thought that was just kind of a neat story of how that tied into the Nodak Race Club. Estevan.
Yeah, the Estevan Motor Speedway, we were talking to some of the guys up there, and they actually, well, it was Williston that fashioned their logo off of theirs. Now this is the old logo that's this is the North Dakota State Racing Association. They've always kind of considered themselves part of that, as they would come down here all the way from the 50s. I believe 1958, the first driver from Estevan came down to the Nodak Speedway here in Minot and started racing. They kicked things off in 1958 up in Estevan. June 11th. That first night they had 11 cars and 2,000 fans. Now, how would you like to pull that one off today? The second race, they had 22 cars, and by the end of the year, 34 cars, 3,000 fans, and they had a great year and really kicked things off. Of course, they're in a different location now, beautiful facility up there in Estevan, but they have quite a history also, going back to 1958.
Yeah, that program happens to be from 1963, and the logo very similar. And speaking about similar logos, when Williston started racing, Jack Bolotsky was the president of the Nodak Race Club in 1972, and he took the bylaws and almost identical logo, except it says Mondak Racing Association on there. And he really got the bylaws and got the racing started out there. 1971, late in the year, is when racing began there. It really went full bore in 1972. And they raced on that track until 1993. And then at that time, Williston built their new hockey rink and fair facility called the Agra. And so the track had to move. They took a year off in 94. And in 1995, they moved the track, turned it around, and made a little bit of a smaller 3/8. And that's where we race now when I go up to Williston. Scott Sim also told me that Jim Stokey was also very involved with Jack Bolotsky in getting that going. June 19th, 1971 was the very first race, Nick, and Clint Flory won the feature race that night. And Bud Everson won the first championship there. And if a lot of you folks in Minot might remember the 192, the blue, baby blue or aqua blue car of Buddy Everson, who won a lot of race titles. He grabbed the first one up there. So Shirley Flory kept a lot of stuff in scrapbooks and stuff to this day. She's got a lot of information up there. That is, I believe, Jim Flory's wife, and that would be John and Joe's mom and dad that still have a pretty darn good scrapbook, I've been told, way back to then. So Williston Basin Speedway, as it's called nowadays, racing every other Saturday night. I'll take care of that track up there as a correspondent. And that's actually one of my favorite tracks to go to announce. It just, the crowd is a little more intimate. Our press box is closer to the fans, and it just proves for some pretty good racing there as well. The last information I have is in Grand Forks at the River City Speedway. For your Fighting Sioux fans, if you think of where the football field used to be before they moved to the Alaris Center, actually it's still there. It's that used to be Eshelman Park, and they raced horses there way back in 1882. And then in 1903, they moved out to where they are now on the fairgrounds.
How old were you in 1903?
I don't think I was born yet.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Some days I think I was. From the old shoulders and the back.
The way you were walking in here tonight, Larry, I thought kind of the same thing.
You can interrupt me all you want. We got all night. We have no bosses on this show, by the way. We are the bosses, so there is no time limit. But, yeah, they moved there in 1903. In 1922, the fair actually started having fairs there. And this is what I thought was really neat. In 1937, the grandstand that there now was built along with their fair arches, which is now on the United States Historic Deeds list. And in 1937, 22,000 people came to listen to FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, give the inception speech of the new grandstand. The grandstand was packed. I guess there was people everywhere. And that happened in 1937, and that's something to this day that I didn't even know at that time. They switched their name from the Grand Forks Speedway to the River City Speedway in 1999. And now, as Johnny Gibson of the World of Outlaws says, and he's the announcer that Lindsay and I got to meet when they started running in Minot, that's his favorite place to watch the Outlaws run. And I'd have to say for me, it's probably the same. Those sprint cars right now to this day on that little bull ring at the River City, pretty exciting
Put on a good
stuff.
show. Good show, that's for sure.
Pretty exciting stuff.
We are interactive on Facebook each and every night, and Jim from Jamestown checking in here. And Jim has a question for both of you hosts, asking, who your favorite race car driver from back in that era would be. Not only the history on the racetrack stuff, but Jim wants to know if either of you guys have a favorite driver from back in that era, way back when.
Well, for me, of course, it was my dad. You know, when you grow up, and we had, and we had all the families were up in the grandstand, and of course, when you're out to the racetrack, you're cheering for your dad the entire time. You know, he was the guy that I always cheered for. You never thought of cheering for anybody else. Now you see it nowadays. You see children of professional athletes and stuff, and they say, oh, somebody else is my favorite player. Well, at the racetrack, there is no other favorite player than if your dad's out there on the track. Larry, now you're not coming from a racing family. I know you had that era were they the late models back then? That with Jack McDonald and some of those guys that were, of course, that's later on. Your original.
Right. Well, I started out with the super modifieds, and the reason I had a favorite here, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but this is a 65 program. There's Andy Nikitanko. I don't know if I can get that on your camera very well. And anyway, if I could straighten this out, the ad right there is McFall's TV, my dad and mom's TV shops, Magic Mile TV, and they had an ad on Andy's page that first year. So I became an Andy Nikitanko fan, and he's a charter member, and he'd been racing for 12 years at that time already. But Andy had his biggest success in the 69 and 70 when he won the Super Modified and then the Super Sprint Championship, and he retired in 71. So Andy Nikitanko, always my guy in sprint cars. I didn't know the Lawson family at that time. I didn't meet Lindsay until about my senior year of 76, I think, around there sometime. And in the late models, or whatever you want to call them, I know they changed their name a few times. Yeah. I just love Jack McDonald. When I saw somebody driving with his arm out the window, like he was on a Sunday drive, and the guy won a lot. He was battling the very first Harvest 100s in the late 70s, a 100-lap classic battle one night with Marlon Seidler. I remember that very well. And Jack, to me, was always my favorite. I was always scared to meet him, and I was in college. But I was intimidated by Jack McDonald. He's now in the Nodak Speedway Hall of Fame, by the way. But Jack just always really intimidated me. And I remember I was in the pits in Minot one night, just watching the races, checked in the pits. And Jack came not with his Chow 100 car. He came with a brand new one that he didn't have time to letter yet. It was all silver. And he was in the third row of the start for the feature race. The flagman made an error and threw the green, didn't like it, immediately threw the yellow. And we all know what happens there.
Chaos.
Mass chaos. And all the cars ended up piled down low and won. And so I ran down to the corner to see what's up, like everybody else, make sure everybody's okay. Jack crawls out of the car, takes a walk around to the front, takes his helmet off, looks down, and I hope I can say this word on TV. I think I can. He says, "Well, it's not a virgin anymore." And I'll never forget that. It was just all mangled and bent, and it was brand new. And you see what these drivers go through all the time, on the cars and having to repair them. And you didn't see Jack McDonald in very many wrecks.
No, that's for sure. He was always out front.
Yeah, most of the time.
Yeah.
Classic battles with a lot of big guys at Nodak.
Fantastic stuff, guys. I think that's the whole insight on this Dirt Weekly idea and where we're going with this thing. Thanks to Jim for sending in that question. Feel free to send us a question at the Dirt Weekly on our Facebook page. We're interactive all night. Well, let's switch gears and look back to last year in the 2016 championships. Boy, there's plenty to cover across North Dakota when we look at the stats and standings where they finished. Pro Style Production bringing you the champions from last year across North Dakota. And let's just dive into it. We'll start with Dakota Speedway. Marlon Seidler still on the map, and boy, he hasn't gone anywhere. He wins again in the modified division, 7 points better than his good buddy Spencer Wilson. In the street stocks, it was Chris Michelson that upended Zach Frederick in his run for a championship, 5 points better than him. Legend Series, it was Donovan Weiss that was 28 points better than Shane Williams. Hobby Stocks went to Brent Vetter. He was better than Wyatt Rathwold by 3 points. that last year in 2016. Josh Rorick wins the Sport Compact. He was 16 better than Jason Berg. On to Southwest Speedway. The modifieds were won by Travis Olheiser. Jason the Big Show Wallace, 17-point back in the modified division. In the Sport Mods, the minor product, Robbie Roselli cruised to a victory, 28 points better than our correspondent, Luke Crow. In the Sport Compact class, Chance Seeley was better than Jason Berg by 6 points. He took home some hardware. Alan Frederick won the street stock category down at Southwest Speedway. Derek Voller was 14-point back, finishing second. Jordan Binstock won the hobby stock class better than Casey Vernon by 4 points when it was all said and done. On to Williston. On the Williston Basin Speedway, the dark horse, Travis Hagen, won the modifieds. It was Chris Schroeder that was 12 points back of the 14-team machine. Sport Mod Division, Eric Lautenschlager, boy, did he have a good year last year. He wins there. He was 10 better than Jeremiah Ledoux. The stock cars went to Joran Boyce. Talk about being off the map maybe for a little bit. He was back. I know you guys will touch on this in a moment, but the 67 Stormin machine wins the stock car division. Dalton Flory, the young gun who's been dominating, was only 5 points less than him. Hobby stock division went to Andrew Birch. Jace Iverson was 10 points behind Birch when the dust settled there. At the Estevan Motor Speedway, the modified division went to Cody Schlope. Riley Emmel was 8 points less than him in the chase for the championship. Late models, they didn't race a whole bunch last year up there, but it was Aaron Turnbull that edged Jim Harris. When it came down to it, the dust settled there. They tied with 54 points, but the trophy went to Turnbull. Stock cars went to Jeremy Swanson. It was Jordan Durward that was 19 points back. Hobby stocks went to Levi Runge. It was Riley Raynard, 33 points behind him. And the young guns, the slingshots, Keenan Glasser was 1 point better than Dexter Saxon. Boy, that's a race there. On to Nodak Speedway at the North Dakota State Fairgrounds, the big show. Jason Walla wins the modified class. John Fuller, had another nice year in the 19 machine. He was 10 points back in the second place spot. Sport Mod division went to Eric Lautenschlager on his home track. He edged out Brock Beater. Boy, the Sport Mods of mine had a good run last year. Stock cars, Dalton Flory, the Williston kid, wins this. He was better than Cody Dingman. That's a runaway 55-point gap there. Hobby stock division went to Dana Brandt. Andrew Birch behind him, 18 points back. On to the east side of the state and the River City Speedway. In the Lightning Sprints, it was Dexter Vergston. My apologies, not too familiar with Vergston. Presley Trudson, 13 points back of him. Late model division went to Dustin Strand, better than Brad Sang by 30 points. That one was a runaway. Pure stocks were a little bit closer. Derek Pollock edged out Dan Everett by 8 points. Travis Robertson upended Ryan Flatten's dreams of being the 2016 champion by 33 points in the street stock category. Sprint cars went to Casey Mack. He was better than Austin Pierce by 34 points there. Also at River City Speedways, the Legends class went to Troy Hoff. He was better than Donovan Weiss by 1 point, and it was Matt Schau that upended Austin Hunter by 1 point in the Midwest Modifieds. Red River Valley Speedway down in Fargo, it was Rob Van Mill that won the Modifieds. He was better than Michael Johnson by 5 points when it was all said and done. Sport Mod category went to Jesse Skolicki. He was better than Kelly Jacobson by 18 points. Pure Stock Division was crowned champion. Billy Carroll, was crowned champion. Casey Usadas was 16 points back. The Legend category went to Josh Julesrud. Tim Estenson was 7 points behind him. On to Jamestown. On the Jamestown Speedway, Lucas Rodin edged Nate Ranke by 16 points in the Midwest Modifieds. Bombers division went to Billy Carroll. He was better than Casey Usadas by 25 points. Junior slingshots went to Reese Eckert. He was better than Taylor Klein by 15 points. A close one in the senior slingshots. It was Cole Babcock that was better than Ryan Erdahl by 2 points. Street stocks, Rory Opp edged out Roy Jawowski by 1 point when that one was all said and done. When you look at Jamestown and the IMCA Modifieds, Marlon Seidler, he wins again. Eric Edwards and Josh Eberhardt both had 16 points, a differential of 16 points, finishing behind Marlon Seidler. Late models went to Shane Eddington, Ryan Corbett, 9 points back. On to Devil's Lake, the slingshots. Bailey Cousins wins this one. Brooke Cousins was 56 points behind. The Legends went to Tom Wagner at Devil's Lake. Brian Hansen, 6 points back. Midwest Modifieds went to Lance Schill. Eric Hauglid, 79 points. That was not much of a race there as the Modified division went to Schill. He ran away with it. Street Stock, same thing. Bo Greger, 83 points better than Daniel McNamee at the end of the season in Devil's Lake. Also in Devil's Lake, Pure Stock, Colton Labor, he wins here. He was better than Lane Buckmeyer by 66 points. The Hornets went to Chase Golay. Trevor Paulson was 9 points back there. Nosa Sprint Cars, Casey Mack, he's at the top of the ladder again. Wade Nygaard, 1 point back there. Late Models went to Dustin Strand. Bill Mooney was 5 points back. Modified Division went to Ward Emery. He upended Ryan Cousins by 34 points at the end of the season. Tri-County Speedway, IMCA Modifieds, Josh Ebenhart was 4 better than Stephen Pfeiffer and John Nord. The Bombers went to Dylan Bitts. Gerald Feist was 20 points back in the Bombers division. Hobby Stocks went to Wyatt Rathwald. Brent Vetter, 34 points back. Street Stocks went to Chris Mickelson. Jody Mickelson, 35 points back from him. Legends went to Troy Hoff. Donovan Weiss, 17 points behind there. In the B Modifieds, Lauren Johnson upended Jim Morlock by 57 points. Not much of a race there. Thunder Mountain Speedway, B Modifieds went to Lance Schill. Norm Wrighton was 151 points back. No race there. Sports Stock went to Steve Beckadall. And the final track that we're going to cover and that we look back on from last year is the Cheyenne River Speedway. Mini Stocks went to Cole Bogart. Neil Walton, 42 points back. Mike Nims wins the Hobby Stocks. Brenner Urbach was 24 points back. Street Stocks went to Johnny Carter. Duffy Fromke was 11 points back. Nate Reinke in the B Modifieds was 53 points better than Zach Reinke. And in the Super Stock division, it was Brian Barnados that was better than John Miller by 78 points. Also at the Cheyenne River Speedway, 305 sprints went to Marcus Rothenbacher. H.J. Norman tied with him with 90 points. Rothenbacher got the trophy. Modifieds went to Jason Grimes from Jamestown. Jerry Lamb and Eric Edwards were 2 points back. I don't know. I think maybe we should switch spots. That's a lot of reading to do off this little tiny screen. I'm out of breath here.
Well, it's only going to be a one-time deal going through last year's champions. I thought you did quite well, but you might need a break.
Yeah, I might need a break. I don't know. I sound like I don't know how to talk, but the screen that I'm looking at is about the size of a nickel over here, so it's kind of a little bit tough. Let's talk about the hot topic now as we continue on with the Dirt Weekly and our first ever show. And plenty to talk about tonight as we meet our entire staff and all the good stuff here. But one of the hot topics that I think is quite interesting that we'd like your feedback as the fans of the Dirt Weekly is there's plenty of discussion around the dirt track racing world, and not only in North Dakota but nationwide. A lot of people have some grievances, if you will, about the dirt, the noise, all sorts of different things, alcohol consumption maybe at these fairground places. And some of the people that live near these racetracks are starting to raise a little dust about this stuff. Larry, I know that you've researched this quite a bit. Lindsay, you've been around and read all sorts of publications that talk about this stuff. Your guys' thoughts overall? Grand Forks is the one that really comes to mind here.
Well, the Grand Forks Herald just came out with an article late last week of a gentleman that was upset that from what I got from it is the park district has kind of banned cigarette smoking in all the outdoor parks and whatnot. And his complaint is, well, the race cars are putting out contaminants into the air. They're throwing up dirt. They're breaking the noise ordinance. He says he's got nothing against the hobby, but he would like to see the track moved out of town. Mm-hmm. And what we talked about before the show tonight is that that's happened almost everywhere you go. Minot raced out on the fairgrounds in '54 when nothing was out there, and now there's houses out there. Estevan and Dickinson, fortunately, are still, way out of their city limits. But in Williston, and we've been going out there now. You went out there 7 years with me.
Right.
I think this will be my 11th year out there. I lose track of time. These years go by so fast. But I think about 4 years ago it was where they started building big townhouses on the other side of the road off of corner number 2 at the Williston Basin Speedway. And I'm just kind of shaking my head like, well, really? And then I remember last year, we had a lot of yellow flags one night. We had a program that wasn't moving along very quickly, and there was complaints about the noise from those townhouses. You built next to a racetrack.
Sorry to interject on this. Let me just ask, Lindsay, your thought, and Larry, we'll get back to it in just a second, but for you, is there anything that can be done? And I know that you've studied up on some of this stuff in other areas, but can cities and towns shut these racetracks down? And do we need to be worried about our racing programs in North Dakota maybe being shut down? And Larry, you could interject as well.
Well, they can, and it has happened. It hasn't happened here locally because usually the racetracks do such a nice job of having a good rapport with the community. The racers are part of that community. If there's some concerns, as there have been in many places, they can usually settle it by putting a curfew on so that the noise doesn't go too late. There's not a lot you can do about dust. You can't stop the farmers from farming their fields if the wind is blowing. So there is something inherent, and you're going to have to put up with that. Some tracks around the country have mandated mufflers on their cars. So that's one of the things that'll knock down the noise. No race car driver wants to put a muffler on their race car. They put all this money and time into making them go faster, more horsepower, and then you put a muffler on and it reduces the horsepower. Nobody wants to do that either, but some places have to make those concessions. By and large, though, without the recent issues that have come up, the racetracks have done a nice job of having a good relationship with the people in the community. Everybody tries to get their races done at a reasonable time for all the right reasons, and we certainly hope that those things don't come up, but it's inevitable. They will come up.
Even the River City Speedway in Grand Forks, as we said on the history, being out there since 1903 when there was nothing else around, and now the town's built around them. If they're forced to move and shut down, would that, if that's the case, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but then does somebody help with the finances of finding some new land and helping build a grandstand? And astronomical prices, obviously, nowadays of building all this stuff. So I would just find it just sad to have to see these tracks shut down because they were built around when they used to be outside of town. I mean, but right. You can't stop progress. But I just hope it gets to where if somebody gets in a tough situation that the community would get together and make some kind of resolution where the club wouldn't have to absorb everything on their own if they ended up having to move.
Right.
Simple concept to me, kind of like you alluded to, is just, well, why'd you rent an apartment there? It's right next to a racetrack. I mean, that almost has to be part of, you don't want to get in any trouble here, but almost has to be a part of the thought process when you're searching for one of these places or taking some land to build a house near that racetrack, something that definitely you would think would go into that consideration.
Just hopefully, that's not the case. If this is the question that we wanted some input on, for some reason I'm not able to pull any of this up. Nick, I told you I was going to look for you. Mine hasn't changed at all. I didn't see that last question come in, so for some reason mine's not updating here. But we would like to hear from you folks out there now for the rest of the part of the show on this topic. If you've got any input, if you've got any situations that you've went through. Maybe you're one of the guys that runs one of these tracks around the state. Definitely chip into the conversation, and we'd like to see where this topic sits right now.
There's one in my inbox. Mark in Williston says, have the cops ever been called to your house when you've got Kiss blaring too loud on your stereo at your house?
Well, fortunately, my house was way away from everything until 5 years ago when they built a bunch of townhouses right on the other side of my trees. So I guess I was kind of like the Williston Basin Speedway. But, I'm 59 years old now, and the Kiss blaring doesn't happen very often. Normally I would be probably sleeping by now, so I don't think I'm ever going to bother anybody again. But back when I did, I was the only one out there, just like the River City Speedway.
So it was no big deal.
Yeah.
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll look at the Darn TV power rankings for the 4 major classes in Western North Dakota. We'll get your thoughts on whether or not the power rankings are on par. Those come from Brandon Beater again with Darn TV. He's not here tonight. Reshaping the Nodak Speedway, by the way, at the Playground of Power. Another topic we could talk about when we return. This is the Dirt Weekly. Thanks for joining us. It's going to be live each and every Wednesday night right here at thedirtweekly.com.
Nodak Speedway, the Playground of Power, invites you to a heart-pounding night of racing action. This Sunday, May 7th, is opening night, with the green flag dropping at 6 p.m. and 4 classes tearing up the track. IMCA Sport Mods, Hobby Stock, Stock Cars, and Modifieds. All the night's racing action is brought to you by Enterbase. It's opening night, this Sunday, May 7th at the Nodak Speedway. The playground of power. The ground is already shaken.
Back on the Dirt Weekly. Each and every Wednesday night, we'll do the same thing right here from the Pro Style Production Studios alongside of Mr. Larry McFall and Lindsay Lawson. I'm Nick Holberg. Thanks for joining us for the Dirt Weekly here tonight. Well, fellas, it's time for the Darn TV Power Rankings, and these are the top 5 that have been put together in every racing division in Western North Dakota. It's going to be interesting to see your guys' thoughts as we move towards this and see where Brandon Beater from Darn TV, he watches plenty of racing. Right. Let's see where he puts these guys on the list. So take notes. Let us know if you think that these are on par or where they fall into place. Let's start with the IMCA hobby stocks, and we'll start here with Brandon Beater's thoughts from Darn TV and the hobby stock rankings. These are the power rankings. He had all sorts of formulas that he put together. It's unfortunate he couldn't have been here tonight. This was not only their home track, but the other tracks around the state. Who's the fastest driver in North Dakota? Well, in the IMCA hobby stocks, Darn TV thinks that Andrew Birch in that 146 machine is the man to beat this year. I'd almost have to agree. Vance Tomlinson right there with him. Number 2, Dana Brandt. Number 3, Levi Runge. Number 4, Riley Raynard. Number 5, on the Darn TV watch list, Trevor Haas, Adam Goff, Jason Ruby, Landon Runge again. And there's the Darn TV power rankings for the IMCA hobby stocks. Gentlemen, in your mind, is there anybody on that list that rightfully shouldn't be there? Is there anybody that we're missing off that list? Looks pretty part of the course for me.
I have to agree. There's the great thing about IMCA racing is there's a lot of parity. I mean, there's another handful of guys that are probably going to be in the mix that weren't on that list, but you can just about bet that all those guys on that list are going to be right up front as soon as we drop the green flag on the season. They ran tough last year. Some of those guys have been perennial favorites, track champions. Tough to go against that.
Larry, is there anybody that you missed big time off of that list for the hobby stocks?
Well, there's no way that Jason Ruby would ever be in front of his wife, Katie. Absolutely no way. Katie beats him every time they go out on the track. At least that's what I remember. Now, maybe Jason can maybe correct me on that, but I would have Katie Ruby above Jason Ruby on the bottom of that list, just to keep it fair and to keep my good graces with Katie as well. But, Tomlinson and Birch had an outstanding battle out in Williston. It went down to the last night. Those two guys, big winners, and very fast, both of them. They put on a great show. In fact, like I said, I'm getting old. My memory on recent stuff slips away. The old stuff I can remember well. I believe Tomlinson broke and did not race the feature race that night when we had a real good setup to have a battle on that last race. I think that's how it went. I might maybe be wrong on that. But other than that, I agree with Lindsay. That list is pretty close to being accurate. I just think those two guys are now on the top of their game. And also, we need to make sure that people, we don't go to these other tracks out east very often, obviously, because we have to be out on the west part of the state. So this is just the power rankings are just for the western. For Darn TV,
the tracks that Darn TV will cover. And good to mention, on the sport mod side of things, Robbie Conway, number 1, Lautenschlager, number 2, Roselli, 3, Brock Beater, number 4, Luke Krogh, number 5. On the watch list, Stan Tomlinson, Brady Biella. Boy, there's some heavy hitters in this list right here. Lindsay, Larry, is there anything on this list that you see that you would disagree with, or are we missing anybody on the Darn TV rankings in Western North Dakota?
No, I don't think I'm going to go against what Brandon had on there either. I think Conway had an outstanding season, and how he did not win the championship in Minot, it just blows my mind. I think he maybe had one DNF second week, maybe third week from what I remember.
He also missed a week, a week or two that he didn't even come to the track. It was a scheduled time that he had to be away. So, yeah, that's why I think it was 9 A-mains that he won.
Dominated.
Yeah.
He was unbelievable, and what a year for Lautenschlager. I mean, he won the track championship at McLean County Speedway, Williston Basin Speedway, Nodak Speedway. He probably even won the go-karts down at Valley Fair for all I know. I mean, the guy, the guy was on fire. And so, no, I think Brandon Beater's got that peg pretty close.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Winning one championship at any of those tracks is a difficult task. Winning three in the same year, it's a career year for him, and certainly wish him the best of luck going forward. One more addition, though. I'm going to put a dark horse in there. Keep an eye on the 12S of Isaac Sondrel. I got a little insight into that program, and keep an eye on him. I think he's going to have a pretty good year, too.
The only one that I'm missing off of there, I think those Lizotte boys, Matt and John Lizotte, have done a nice job over the past couple years. You remember back to the big race with Lautenschlager and Lizotte, where Lautenschlager passed him on the final lap for the Sport Mod Special. Look for the Lizotte boys to be there. They're my pick that weren't on the list. Let's move on now to the stock cars, and this is who we have on the stock car list. No surprise, Dalton Flory. He's not even old enough to go into a bar and buy a beer yet, but he's got more titles at racetracks and feature wins than any of us could probably ever dream of. Jeremy Swanson, number 2. Greg Mann, number 3. Nathan Burke, number 4. Chris Ellis, he's on the map. He's number 5. Watch list, Jordan Boyce, Scott Yale, and Joe Flory. Fellas, when you look at this list, any surprises here? Is there any debate on the table with what you see from the Darn TV power rankings for hobby stocks in Western North Dakota?
Well, I think that's spot on once again. You know, as you talked about Dalton Flory being a young guy and his dedication from such a young age, being a teenager and having such success, also growing up in a racing family. And, yeah, his success is unprecedented at his age. He is on the right track, and somebody's going to have to really step up if they're going to take the crown from him this year.
I don't get to see Greg Mann race very often because he's up from Estevan and doesn't make it down to the playground very much anymore. But Dalton Flory, I think, has got to be far and beyond the best guy around here. I mean, he's the only guy that took the crown away from Elijah Zevenbergen one of those years at the Stock Car Tour. Zevenbergen also did real well when I was down in Phoenix in February. He did good at the Arizona Mod Tour when Tom Dalen brought me down there as well. But I don't think anybody's going to touch Dalton Flory this year. But I got hats off to Jordan Boyce.
Yes.
I mean, he decided to just run a stock car program now instead of running a mod. And he has found something that has got him back to that top level again at his age. It's not easy. You know, I was talking to Marlon Seidler a little bit last Sunday at the Test and Tune, and it ain't easy for somebody that's, you know, Marlon's age, over 60, and Joran, you know, has got to be pushing mid-50s now, I would think. That's a physical, just a drain on the body, and for him to make that comeback and to race the way he was this last summer is just amazing.
Maybe a special category comeback racer of the year for 2016, Jordan Boyce. And he can back it up, and everybody go, well, we expected him to win, I guess. Everybody be right back on the Green Machines bandwagon.
We don't have a whole lot of time left of the show here to talk about this now because this is going to spawn way too much stuff. But when you talk about Dalton Flory not even being 21 years old, a contender each and every year, let's talk about this next week and have it on the map. People know that this is what we're going to talk about. Let's talk about some of those guys like Boyce and Seidler and some of the big names, the Mad Mikes from my childhood growing up. I'd like to know your guys' thoughts. Were they that good when they were Dalton Flory's age moving up the ladder, or did they get better as time went, or kind of where do they fall into place? We'll talk about that next week because I'm sure we could sit here for another 2 hours and talk about that once we get it brewing. Talking about Seidler and some of those guys, let's look at the modifieds now, and here's who the Darn TV staff thinks that deserves to be on this list of the power rankings of the top 5 mod drivers from the tracks that Darn TV covers. The Big Show, Jason Walla, he sits number 1 on the list. Sean Strand, number 2. The Flamin' number 1 of Mark Dahl sits number 3. Travis Hagen, the Dark Horse, number 4. Jeremy Keller, the 11K, number 5. Marlon Seidler's on the list, so is Spencer Wilson, Travis Peary, and John Flory. And boy, when you talk about IMCA modified racing in the nation, these are some heavy hitters on the map. And boy, the top 5, there's plenty more that could be on there, but this seems to be pretty safe to say that these guys are at least in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely right. Those guys have been, they've been fast for many years. There's a lot of experience in that list, and in that modified division, that's what it takes. It's not often you see a young guy come into that class and go right to the top and start winning. Might win a feature here and there, but it does take some time to really settle into that modified class. There's a lot of experience, competition, and it's tough out there. You can see the guys that race around here locally travel across the Midwest and across the country and do well wherever they go. So the people say that for many years about the Dakota Classic Modified Tour. They come from all parts of the country. Some people we've seen come up here, national champions, track champions, they come up here, they leave with their tails between their legs and said, we didn't think it was going to be this tough here, and we never hear from them again. So that's a tough list, and it's tough to break into that list.
I'd have to move Marlon Seidler up on that list right now. Jeremy Keller, I think, had a lot of bad breaks and maybe a little bit inconsistent the last couple years. Mark Dahl hasn't really competed on a real high level that I've seen around here. I mean, he's tough down in Mandan, but he doesn't come up here much, so I can't honestly put him up. And I would put Marlon Seidler up there. He won the championship at that track, and he also won the Jamestown Speedway, and he took second to Dickinson last year. So I think Marlon Seidler has to be in the top 5, and I would put Spencer Wilson up there as well. Jeremy Keller's a great driver, but going in, if you're looking at power rankings going into this year, he had a real snake-bitten year last year, had a lot of trouble. I don't think he starts out in the top 5.
Is Jason Walla the fastest mod driver in North Dakota?
The big show's pretty good.
Yeah.
He's very consistent, and he comes from the back of the pack better than anybody that I've seen lately. I mean, he gets some bad draws, but he still works his way up there. He's a pretty good driver. He actually really came out of nowhere the last 4 years. So, yeah, the big show is definitely the real deal as well.
Those are the Darn TV Power Rankings as we just about get set to put a cap on the first ever Dirt Weekly show. Keep in mind, we're more than happy to take your Facebook questions, comments, all that sort of stuff. We'll have another lineup for you next week after opening night at a bunch of tracks around North Dakota, including our home track here in Minot, the Nodak Speedway. Right. Gentlemen, you looking forward to the weekend coming up, and what's on the tap coming forward?
Well, opening weekends all over the place, as our correspondent said. We've got the Southwest Speedway gets going this Saturday night. Mandan gets going this Friday night.
Thunder Mountain Speedway, Botno tomorrow night.
They're the first starter, actually.
Yep.
Grand Forks will roll. Fargo will roll. Jamestown's getting in action. We're at the Playground of Power. The only track that really doesn't is the Williston Basin Speedway. So they wait for the Southwest Speedway in Estevan to run. And then the next week is Williston's opener with their band day. So got one more question that came in here, Nick.
Fantastic.
From an old tennis player of mine from back in the day, Shannon Dawkin. He thinks we're leaving out Hot Foot Hooker, the number 7 machine in the sport mods, who Hot Foot did have some pretty good runs last year as well. And he thinks he should be considered for the top 5 or the...
Yeah, you can't disagree with that. Coming into this season with a new car, he had it out there at practice day. So anytime you get a new car, things get a little bit faster. So yeah, there's definitely Hot Foot Hooker should be in the conversation too.
Let's start a fire. Who comes off the list in favor of Hot Foot Hooker that you see in front of you?
No, politically correct. We just add to the list.
Oh, you just add to it.
That's how we do this.
We still have to drive home on the highway, and there's lots of spots for snipers out there.
Yeah, I don't know about it.
So just keep adding to it.
We don't want to pull anybody off.
Well, Larry, we're wrapping up the show. I think you did a pretty good job. I'm going to give you 4 out of 5 Kit Kats for your efforts tonight. Not quite a perfect show, but 4 out of 5 Kit Kats tonight.
Well, thank you very much.
It was nicely done.
I already got the bonus bar, though.
Well, you still have that sponsorship.
Kit Kat. When you're hungry, snap into a Kit Kat.
What a show. Thanks for joining us tonight. Final thoughts? You guys have anything else? I mean, let's leave on the Kit Kat thing. That's fantastic.
Good enough for me.
We'll see you next week right here from the Pro Style Production Studios, south of Minot, North Dakota. This has been a presentation of Pro Style Production. This is the Dirt Weekly. We'll see you live each and every Wednesday night at 7 p.m.
Nodak Speedway, the playground. Playground of Power invites you to a heart-pounding night of racing action. This Sunday, May 7th, is opening night, with the green flag dropping at 6 p.m. and 4 classes tearing up the track. IMCA Sport Mods, Hobby Stock, Stock Cars, and Modifieds. All the night's racing action is brought to you by Enterbase. It's opening night, this Sunday, May 7th at the Nodak Speedway. The Playground of Power. The ground is already shaken.